So it's always a bit of a magical mystery tour, even though, what I've been talking about for, many decades, one way or another. And in a way, if you don't have a lot to say, then, it's kind of pretty obvious what you do want to say. But if there are not only a lot to say, but many different layers or levels of what to say, then it gets a little bit more complicated. So, each morning I sit and sort of listen. And I've learned to to trust what comes to me, and sometimes it comes in the shower or when I'm brushing my teeth. It doesn't necessarily come when I'm when I ask for it, but nonetheless, asking is an important element of the relationship with mystery, or the relationship with the Tao, or the relationship with the divine, whatever word you want to use for it. And sometimes I'm so busy asking the question that I'm not listening to the answer, which is why I think it kind of zaps in when I'm just cleaning my teeth. I've kind of got out of the way. That desire. What am I going to say? What are we going to do? That desire is out of the way. It's not present. I'm just cleaning my teeth, and as such, I'm just more in my natural self, and that allows wisdom just to kind of pop in a message. Whereas if I was kind of calibrating it on, well, now this is a holy moment, so what's coming here is important, and this is not a holy moment, and therefore what's coming there isn't easy to miss. So I want to tell you a story, and it's about Zumbak, the tailor. Some of you may have heard this. So there's this man, or it could be a woman. But in the traditional story, it's a man. And he's come into some money, and he realizes he needs a new suit. So he asks around the community where he lives, who's like the best tailor here? And the consensus is that Zumbak, the tailor, is the number one guy that you want to go and see if you want to have a really, really good suit. So he goes, okay. So he's still not 100% sure. When people kind of recommend stuff to you, you kind of go along, but you're contesting it a bit. So he walks into Zumbak's shop, and he sees all the different cloths, and Zumbak seems to be quite a nice guy, and so he says what he wants, and so Zumbak says, well, first of all, we must choose the right material, and he gets out this material, and he gets that material, and he gets this color swatch and that color swatch, and he puts it up against his face, and the guy's thinking, oh, yeah, that's pretty good. Zumbak knows what he's doing. Last tailor I went to didn't take this kind of trouble. So he's kind of starting to feel a bit easier about the whole process. And then Zumbak says, well, now we've chosen, we've got the right color and the right pattern for you, and it's fitting what you want. And now we're going to take your measurements. And Zumbak, Zumbak takes these measurements like you wouldn't believe. I mean, this guy's thinking, no one's ever measured that on me before. Not that. Wow. This is going to be amazing. I mean, so I'm so glad I came to Zumbak's shop. And Zumbak writes them all down assiduously, and just keeps going until he's got everything absolutely right. And he sort of says to the guy, okay, so it's going to take me a little while, but come back in 2 weeks, and we'll just do a little bit of a fitting, and then you'll have your suit ready. So the guy walks out of the shop thinking, got the right man for the job. And excitedly, he comes back 2 weeks later. And he says, welcome. Yes, it's almost ready for you. We just need to make a few extra little bits and pieces, make sure it's right. So he puts him up on the pedestal, and he gets the the kind of rough workings of the jacket, and he's adjusting a little bit here and adjusting a little bit there. And he was not letting the guy see it. It was just a little bit here, a little bit there. And so I think that's going to be just amazing. It's going to look fabulous in this. I come back in 2 days' time, and we'll do the proper fitting, you can walk out with your new suit. So the guy is just feeling really made up about the whole business. He's going to get a fabulous suit. It's going to suit him perfectly. It's going to be exactly the right cloth. It's going to fit him like a glove. I mean, with those measurements, it's got to be like amazing. And all of this incredible, recommendation from virtually everybody that he's met, and especially when he said, I'm having my suit made by Zumbak. Like, oh my God, Zumbak, it's going to be amazing. So he's like really, really happy. So 2 days later, the time arrives. He arrives at Zumbak's shop, and Zumbak says, "Yeah, we'll just go stand on the pedestal," and like that kind of measuring thing they do, and puts the suit on, and he looks down, and he sort of sees that the sleeve is not quite, it should be like here, and the sleeve is sort of there. And he said, but Zumbak, this is not quite right. And Zumbak says, oh, well, don't worry. If you just sort of, and I have to hold, if you just sort of scrunch your shoulder up like that, and just pull that down there. See how that's perfect. If you just hold it like that, just like that, you see that's perfect. How perfect that is. See how perfect that is. Well, yeah. So, but he says, but this. He says the shoulder isn't quite, isn't quite right, and I expect it to be perfect. And so Zumbak says, well, if you just sort of drop your shoulder like that, do you see how it's just fitting perfectly now? And the guy goes, wow, it's true, it's fitting perfectly. And yet, he's sort of agreeing, and at the same time, he's thinking, something's not right here. So anyways, Zumbak says, well, why don't you go out, and kind of walk around a bit and see how it is. And so the guy's kind of walking down. He made a few other adjustments to make it fit just right. And the guy's walking down the street like this, so it sort of fits, because he's feeling a bit embarrassed. Everyone knows he's going to Zumbak the tailor, and he's going to get his perfect suit, and he's paying all this money. And he's got to make it look good, I mean, it is, after all, it was his choice. And so he's kind of walking down the street like this, and somebody, I have to stop that. Somebody comes along, that knows him, and said, wow, nice suit, and he goes, really? Yeah, nice Zumbak suit. And then somebody else comes along and said, wow, really nice suit, nice cloth. Yeah, well, yes, yes, it is. Yeah, thanks. And somebody else comes along and says, wow, how did somebody make that suit fit so perfectly? And the guy said, oh, well, I went to Zumbak the tailor. He said, oh, Zumbak the tailor, I knew it must be, because only Zumbak would make a suit to fit such a weirdo like you. And he's sort of standing there thinking, but that's not who I am. But yes. Haven't you done that? I know I have. He says yes to something that you know is not right, doesn't fit. And you squeeze yourself, maybe it's not a suit, but you squeeze yourself into a shape just to make it okay. I mean, whether it's something from Amazon, that you arrive, it's not quite what you think it should be. And you can feel yourself, making up reasons why, well, it's okay. And that's what this man did with the suit. He contorted himself, to fit. His ego is involved. His wish to be accepted was involved. His wish to prove that he'd gone to the right person. Haven't you done that? And there's a certain way of looking at us, at each other. And what you see is that we're all wearing Zumbak's suit, one way or the other. And it starts really young. As I've kind of gone on and I've gone, deeper into, why, why we do what we do. And through not just, Tai Chi and TMW, but through meditation, and not just meditation, but healing, and the understanding of kind of karmic formations. I understand that we are really quite damaged. In fact, I think it's amazing that we do as well as we do. And if you like, worse than that, I've come to realize that a lot of us are really damaged, that we have been violated and abused. We've had our sovereignty cut in so many different ways. Sort of sexual violence, physical violence, emotional violence, and mental violence. And the way to think about it is that if you think about a seed, you think about the seed of a tree. Within that seed, is the whole magnificence, of that creation, of that tree or that flower. It's got a promise to it. It has this magnificence to it, but it is not as yet ignited. Everything's there. It's all waiting. It's the seed. And, if the seed is planted in the earth, it's still a promise only. Nobody can see it for a start. But, within the ground, underground, it's still a promise. Until, the conditions are right. And only then, and for not all seeds, but only then, if the seed allows the life force to come into it, can it begin to, ignite. So first of all, there has to be that opening, that allowing of life force to come in. And then secondly, there's this ignition within the seed that starts the, you might think of it as a sprouting, that starts the growth of the seed. And from there, if all is well, you get, it pops up above the surface of the earth, and then from then, it starts to grow and it starts to grow and starts to grow. Now, if you imagine, that if we are that seed, and if you imagine that we are that place that allows life is denied or damaged, or that seed itself is denied or damaged or unacknowledged. So you think about, this place where the energy comes in is what's known as the root chakra. It's the energy center. That is where the base of the seed is the base, our base energy center. I don't mean base as in worse. I mean, it's the root. It's where that energy of the earth comes in. And then, the next energy center is the sacral energy center, the sacral chakra. And this is where that ignition takes place. And if early on in life, for example, those places are compromised, or those places are damaged through this break of trust, one way or another, then that energy center, that sort of turbine, is not in its fullness. It's bent, it's cracked, it's compressed. It can only turn in a certain way, which means that when the life force moves through it, instead of it hitting, the perfect promise, it's hitting this kind of damaged promise. And that's where a lot of us are. I mean, a lot more than you might think. And in some cases, it's deeply disturbing, but on a much more, on a sort of different level, if you like. There is social conditioning. So within each culture, there are different rules, there are different regulations. In this culture, that's a no-no. In this culture, that's a no-no. For the seed, there is no no-no in that sense. But for that conditioning culture, there is a no-no. So depending on how you want to look at it, this area of the kind of pelvis is like a bowl, and I have a bowl here. This is a singing bowl. It's a lovely singing bowl, and it's round. It's open. It's kind of heavy, and when I put it on something, it sits very solidly. And our pelvis, our pelvic area, the cradle, of our pelvis, is like this bowl when it's in its healthy place. And the pelvis, you might think of it as the bowl, has within it, this sort of root chakra, which is the connection with the earth, and it has within it this power. That this bowl, for example, its sound, comes from the shape. It comes from the shape. I don't know if you can hear that. That's a slightly bass note. I don't know if you can, but that comes from that shape, and if that shape is distorted, it's not going to sound like that at all. It's going to sound quite different. It's going to sound discordant. And so you might say that the way that I look at it, the way that I've come to see it, the way that I've come to understand it, is that this ascent, and this is the baseline of our creation. If the seed, if the opening of the seed is compromised, then the seed itself is going to be compromised. What grows out of it is everything comes from here, which is why it's so important. And in a sense, that is the first movement. If this isn't right, then where anything above that is moving against the tide, you might say. It's moving against the current. However good I might be trying to do something, I'm pushing against the current. But I also want to, just to give you another, zoom back to Taylor, comes from, that story comes from a Jewish tradition. But I also want to kind of balance it with a story from the Sufi tradition about Nasruddin. And Nasruddin is a teaching figure in the Sufi tradition, kind of a rascal. There's lots of stories about Nasruddin. And again, when I was sitting, asking that question and contemplating what one can say, about Zumbak and what that image is saying. Is there another story that I could tell? And Nasruddin immediately came to mind. So Nasruddin is going to the bank, and Nasruddin has a check for cash, big check for cash. And the bank tellers have been alerted to the fact that there is this slightly disreputable person coming, and just make sure that the check, uh, the check and the identity of the person cashing the check is correct, and because there's this dodgy people around, and you know to be too careful. So so Nasruddin presents the check. Let's say it's for £10,000, an unusual amount. And the teller looks at the check and goes, "Oh my God, that's a bit unusual." So says to Nasruddin, "Well, so Nasruddin, can you prove your identity, that you are Nasruddin?" So Nasruddin goes, "I mean, like, do you have a bank card or something?" I said, "No, I don't have a bank card. I left it at home." "Well, do you have a driving license for your camel?" I don't know if they had driving licenses in those days, but anyway, do you have a driving license, with a picture on it? No, I'm sorry, I've left that at home as well. Well, so how am I going to cash this check if you can't verify who you are? Nasruddin thinks for a moment. He says, "I know." And he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out a kind of pocket mirror and he looks into it and he goes, yeah, that's me. Where's my money?" "Yeah, that's me. That's me, all right. This is me. You take it or leave it. This is me. This is the fullness of me." And I love that story. I'd love to do that one day, just for the hell of it. But can you feel? There's two spirits there, and we all love a kind of sacred rascal. There's something about the sacred rascal that's certainly I do. It kind of tickles me, because the sacred rascal does stuff that I might quite like to do, but I don't. It's like I'm in the Zumbak's coat. So this sort of first principle, and I'm kind of thinking about these meditations and evolve, just not changing, but just giving a different dimension to them. Over the next these three sessions, different dimension, a kind of physical dimension, to the meditation, and the physical dimension to that first principle is into the belly, is into the pelvis, is into this area, of the hara, and in martial arts, in the Japanese sense, the hara is absolutely fundamental. It is the place of power. If you think about the kind of Zen masters, you think about the Zen look, you're coming from your center. You are not fazed by what's coming. And what you're showing, is you're rooted. What you're showing is you're planted. What you're showing is I'm here and I see you. And there's nothing you can do that I'm not going to know about. And what's more, I'm going to respond because I'm not frightened. I'm not cowering. I'm not aggressive. I'm just here. I'm here like a forest. And a lot of that dance around power is, a bully is only going to work with someone that they can bully. It's just how it is. Because a bully really is frightened. So they're looking for, and you can read into bully any kinds of dynamic person. You can think about any lots of different ways. But a bully is looking for that movement, and then they know that they can bully you. They're looking for that movement because they know you will fit into their game. But when you have remade this connection, when you've settled back into your promise, into your potential, when you've remade, that sacred connection with the ground, with the earth, you are opening yourself to the power of creation, and you are opening yourself to the promise, within the seed of you. You're opening yourself to the fullness of who you can be. And you are repairing the damage, that others have given you, and then you have given yourself by, oh yeah, that looks really good. So, and I don't think, it's almost part of the human condition. I don't think anyone is without it. I think if you take form as a human being, it's almost within the design. So there's no fault here. But what there is the responsibility to understand the nature of life and understand the responsibility to remake our connection, with the ground of ourselves, with the promise of the seed. And through that connection, we can then, as it were, as mature adults now, we can now grow ourselves and fill ourselves out into something more of our true shape, rather than the shape of somebody else. And I've said before many times that it was quite a moment when I realized that I was modeling myself on my teachers, which is a natural thing to do. But it's nuts. It's another form of Zumbak's code. Because that teacher, whether it was the Tibetan teacher or the Thai teacher, or whether it was the Chinese teacher, or whether it was the American teacher, or whether it was the Hindu teacher, or what, that teacher could, is perfect as themselves. And I can only ever be a pale reflection. And whilst I'm doing that for whatever reason, I'm also denying my own, as it were, magnificence, my own truth. So there was this moment when I found myself modeling, if I was being kind to myself, I'm modeling myself on something which I think is good, but then seeing the craziness of that. So there's, I started off in a more kind of from a wounds point of view, and just following my own kind of contemplation. There's also this movement for good reason. I mean, I take that person as a model, but only so far, because what is required is that I find myself. And so whichever way you look at it, I'm sure you will see, if you just look, you will see the relevance of this understanding, and the relevance of this area. I'm kind of this area here. So here's my belly button, and just below that is the hara, and that's what I want us to focus on this morning for the meditation.